Museum of Contemporary Art Denver and the Denver Center for the Performing Arts present Mixed Taste, tag team lectures on unrelated topics. And now, introducing tonight's unlikely pairing, Roswell and Georgian Polyphonic Singing. Please welcome tonight's host, yours truly, Brenton Zola. But luckily, I have a built-in microphone just in case. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. How are you all doing? Yeah, we love to hear it. Welcome to Mixed Taste 2022. My name is Brenton Zola. I am an artist who uses the power of narrative to make the world more human. I am one of the co-curators of Mixed Taste alongside my amazing colleagues, Sarah Bai and Charlie Miller. So I'll be taking turns hosting this event throughout the next several weeks. So this is the 18th year of Mixed Taste. That's right, I know, 18 years, right? It's crazy, it's awesome. So Mixed Taste is produced as a partnership between the MCA Denver and DCPA's Off Center. The MCA Denver, Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver, is Denver's creative center of gravity. It ignites curiosity through art and culture. DCPA's Off Center creates unexpected theatrical experiences that put the audience at the center of the story. And actually, at the end of August, they will be premiering their latest production, Theater of the Mind, which is David Byrne's new project. So definitely go check that out. It's gonna be fun. I've seen it. It's gonna be really, really, really fun. So not only do I wanna welcome everyone here in the live audience, but I want to welcome everyone who's watching at home as well. We have a sort of dual stream that's going on. So we're super excited to be here at the Holiday Theater. And for those at home, cheers to you. I hope you're enjoying a tasty beverage as well. So in order for there to be some cohesion between the viewers here in the ballroom and those watching live at home, watching Mixed Taste, we have a fun second screen experience. So here's how it works. You can scan the QR code on the screen up here or on your program here in the ballroom. And all you have to do in order to scan a QR code is just pull out your phone, open your camera, just hover the camera over the code, and it'll pop up and populate with a notification that will send you to a link. If the QR code doesn't work on your phone for some reason, you can also just go to slido.com and you just enter the code Mixed Taste, all one word, and it should also allow you to participate digitally. So once you click on that link, you should be on a web page that has 3 tabs on it. The tabs will be the ideas chat, the polls, and the Q&A, which we'll need for the end of the show. So we're going to test out the poll function right now. In order to do that, I'm actually going to invite one of our speakers up early to give me a little bit of a hand to facilitate this poll. So I'm going to invite my friend Guillaume to the stage. Guillaume? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so give you another couple of seconds to get your QR codes ready, get your Slidos ready. All right. So we're gonna start and test out our Slido function with a quick poll. So our poll tonight is going to be, what is your favorite musical chord? So for those of you who are not musicians out there, this might look like a bunch of gibberish. And so I have Guillaume here to give a sonic demonstration of what all of these chords are. So the first chord we have is A major 7, flat 5. 7, flat 5. Our second chord, it says B flat, but it's actually going to be B, is B minor, add 9, add 13. Our third chord is one that's used in like every famous song ever, D major. And then our last chord is G major 6, no 5th. Okay, so you have heard the various chords. Take a second and vote on what is your favorite chord. All right, look at that. It's a race. Oh, A major 7. No, B minor has overtaken it. Wow. Okay, Wow, B minor's really, he's gaining. Okay, cool. All right, I think B minor takes the cake with A major 7 flat 5 as a close second. Thank you so much, Guillaume, for your sonic contributions. I appreciate you. Okay, now we're going to practice a little bit of the chat. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So tonight we're going to be talking about Roswell. So that also means we're going to be talking about aliens. So in the Ideas tab in Slido, I would love to know, have you ever had an otherworldly encounter? So just click on that tab, and maybe in just like a few words, you can tell us your story, or you could even just simply answer yes or no on if you've had an otherworldly encounter. And if it's an especially good story, find me afterward. We can go have a glass of wine. You can talk about it. All right, so they're not going to populate on the screen, but I see them populating here on my screen. And we have definitely some affirmative answers on this, so that's really awesome. Okay, so now we're going to get our official programming started. We've got all of our tech out of the way. Ready to go? Cool. Okay, so for those of you, actually raise your hand if it's your first time at Mixed Taste. Okay, cool, we have some new faces. Welcome, welcome. So Mixed Taste is a mashup series where we bring together two experts who each present on different topics, and then we have a live question and answer session at the end to try to find the connections between them. The rules are pretty simple. The first speaker will talk for 20 minutes, and as will the second, but the two topics will be seemingly unrelated. During the first part of the program, which is now, no connections are allowed between the two topics, but during the Q&A at the end, anything goes, so anything can happen. So between the talks, we're going to have a little bit of a break. We'll play a little fun game. And at the end of the evening, there will be a creative offering to sort of tie it all together. So I'm going to now introduce our first speaker. She is a journalist, editor, and producer in both radio and print, and co-founder of the Denver-based media company Foxtopus Inc. Her podcast, Wild Thing, has had over 5 million downloads and received critical acclaim from a wide variety of media outlets, including The Atlantic, Rolling Stone, and Scientific American. Wild Thing will also be a series of nonfiction middle grade books by Abrams Kids, with the first title, The Search for Sasquatch, expected in October of this year. Prior to launching Wild Thing, she spent a decade editing and producing for NPR in Washington, D.C., and KPCC in Los Angeles. So please give a warm and rousing welcome to the wonderful Laura Krantz.
Wow, it's bright. Thank you, Brenton. Thanks to DCPA, and thanks to the MCA Denver for everything they are doing to put this event on. It's really amazing. I'm a little nervous because, as Brenton mentioned, I have a podcast called Wild Thing, and I am not used to being able to see my audience, although thankfully it's so bright that I can't. I'm also not used to my audience being able to see me. So if you guys could just close your eyes maybe for the next 20 minutes, it'd be perfect. All right, raise your hands if you've heard of Roswell. Okay, you've all heard of Roswell. Chances are it's because of something very specific, that Roswell is one of the country's largest mozzarella producers. Oh, that's not it? Well, that is true, and that is a fun little tidbit you can now trot out at cocktail parties. But I'm guessing that many of you know about Roswell because it is practically a synonym for a UFO crash and a government cover-up. And this is an event that took place 75 years ago this summer. Now, there are a lot of stories and myths and rumors about what happened of varying degrees of accuracy. Did it occur 65 miles northwest of Roswell? Or was it 30 miles north of Roswell? Or was it 55 miles west by northwest of Roswell? Did it all start in June or in July? And these aren't even the important parts. But for the sake of the story, and it is a good story, I am not going to spend this talk parsing over the details and examining every single fact or non-fact. Instead, I'm going to start by sharing the tale that I was told by a bona fide UFO investigator, which may or may not be the truth. It's one I heard when I went down to Roswell one hot July weekend to attend the official city-sponsored Roswell UFO Festival and see what all the fuss is about. So it is a bit of a drive from Denver, and once you get south of Las Vegas, New Mexico, there is not much to see in the terms of stunning vistas or outstanding landmarks. But while the landscape around Roswell is not particularly beautiful, the sheer expanse of it does inspire a sort of awe. It stretches unbroken off into the distance, punctuated by tufts of green grasses and clumps of cacti. There are miles of barbed wire fences and the occasional cluster of dusty cows parked around a muddy watering hole, which is where I would be if I lived in the New Mexico desert and I was a cow. But it is the sky, and wow, this is by far the biggest feature out here. It dominates what you see when you look out over the land, and my little slide is not working. All right, well, it dominates what you see when you look out over the land, and anything that breaks up the sheer expanse of it, whether it's a streak of movement, an odd shape, a flashing light. And so on a hot summer evening in 1947, on this ranch, 65 miles or 35 miles or 55 miles from Roswell, ooh, there we go, as thunder rumbled in the distance, a rancher by the name of William Mac Brazel saw a sudden bolt of lightning. And this sudden bolt of lightning was supposedly followed by the sound of an explosion. The next morning, he went out in the desert to check on his sheep and his windmills, and he found a field of debris scattered 3/4 of a mile over the desert expanse, and there was all these broken pieces of metal and wood. He picked some of it up. He looked at it. He scratched his head. He couldn't figure out what it was. So he loaded some in his pickup truck, and he drove to town, to Roswell, and he handed it over to the sheriff. And in doing all of this, Mac steps into the history books and becomes a character in one of America's most well-known legends, because the sheriff passed all of this material off to the military, who were based at the nearby Roswell Army Airfield. There we go. Nope, but all right. And in doing this, we already said that. So the Army Airfield, upon getting this truckload of bits and bobs, two men, Major Marcel, who's pictured here, and Captain Cabot, drove up to Mac's ranch. They collected more of this debris, and they brought it back to base, where they tried to piece it together. All of these events took place on July 7th, 1947. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of context, because just a few weeks prior to the events at Roswell, on June 24th, 1947, a pilot by the name of Kenneth Arnold was flying near Mount Rainier in Washington state, and he saw 9 shiny round objects flying incredibly fast. He said they moved like saucers skipping over the water. Think of like a stone skipping across a pond. And when he told reporters what he'd seen, they called them flying saucers, and the name stuck. So these stories went everywhere. And over the next couple of days, hundreds of people all over the world and all over the United States also reported seeing other saucer-like objects. So Americans definitely had saucers and UFOs on the brain. All right, so back to Roswell, where on July 8th, the base commander there issued a press release that said that the military had captured the remains of a flying disc, and that news went everywhere and fast. Maybe. Maybe not. There we go.
The American Broadcasting Company and affiliated stations present Headline Edition with Taylor Grant. Today's edition presents a roundup of the latest developments in the finding of a flying disc.
Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week.
So remember, all of this is on July 8th. And then the next morning on July 9th, the military issues another statement, saying that all the debris had come from an ordinary weather balloon that had crashed in the desert. This really is not working. Anyway, case closed, nothing to see here, move along. And so we did. And no one spent time thinking about Roswell again for 30 years. Why would we? The government had told us there was nothing to it, and we believed them. And why wouldn't we? In 1947, we are fresh off of World War II, the good war. We had defeated our enemies, we had demonstrated American might, and we had established our place on the world stage. Side note, all of that happens because of a massive government secret costing over $2 billion and employing thousands, AKA the Manhattan Project. But that was out in the open now. And we had been on the side of what seemed right and what seemed good, and our government and our military had guided us there. So if they said it is a weather balloon, it's a weather balloon. End of story. Except it's not. Because the Roswell story reappears in the 1970s, and while the bones of the tale remain the same, the crash in the desert, the debris field, military statements and retractions, the world has changed. We have changed. And as a result, Roswell becomes something so much more than what it had been. In 1978, a former nuclear physicist named Stanton Friedman heard a story. It supposedly came from a scientist who had seen the remains of a flying saucer and several bodies somewhere in New Mexico. Friedman, who in 1970 had quit his job to start chasing UFOs, then encountered Major Marcel, one of the military men who'd picked up the debris from the crash 30 years before, and who now claimed that what he'd seen was, quote, not of this world. He also said that it was certainly not, as the military had stated, a weather balloon. In fact, come to think of it, if you look back at the military's story and the way they changed it from flying disc to weather balloon, it did seem to happen awfully fast. And what people had easily let go by in the past now gave them reason to be suspicious. So to uncover what had actually happened, ufologists like Friedman interviewed hundreds of people supposedly connected to the events at Roswell. They collected stacks of official documents, some of them more authentic than others. They went back out to the site of the crash, wherever that was, and they looked for more evidence. And what was their conclusion? That the first story, the flying disc story, was the real truth. An alien spaceship had crashed into the desert, scattering debris from hell to breakfast and leaving a trail of alien bodies rotting in the hot desert sun. The government had recovered both the craft and the bodies and brought them to the Roswell Army Airfield, where a team of nurses and scientists conducted hasty autopsies and made sketches. Then the military packed everything up and sent it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio before shipping it to its supposedly permanent location at, where else? Area 51 in Nevada. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Area 51 is a highly classified United States Air Force facility. The military says it's where they develop and test experimental aircraft and weapons systems. Understandably, they are not too keen on people poking around asking questions, and if you decide to drive up to their heavily guarded borders, it doesn't look like there's people there are people there. I have done this. You can pretty much guarantee you're being watched by like a million cameras and probably some drones and God knows what else they have. All of this, of course, only makes people wonder what else they are doing out there in the desert, like collecting aliens and spacecraft parts. So, now, in addition to the alleged bodies, and some stories say there are no bodies, so go figure, the Roswell crash site also contained a lot of other interesting items, supposedly. Technologies that ufologists argued that we humans could never have developed on our own. Things like fiber optics, night vision, the integrated circuit. Never mind that these were things that we had already started developing. Then there were these strange metals, combination of elements that ufologists said that absolutely cannot be made on Earth, except a quick Google search will show you that they can. There was some sort of memory material that you could crumple up but it would return to its original shape, flowing like water, I'm told. There were hieroglyphs that supposedly resembled those on the Great Pyramids of Egypt. I'm not sure I see that. And over again, I heard how to this day, the government still has absolutely no idea of how this spacecraft worked. I'm told it's like if we took a toaster back to the Middle Ages. Sure, they could probably take it apart, but without understanding the technology, one that far exceeds their technological capabilities at the time, the contraption wouldn't make any sense. Same thing here. Now, I realize that we did not have Google back in the 1970s and 1980s, and searching out accurate information was a lot more difficult. But the willingness of people to believe these stories, to swallow them whole, when 30 years prior there had been no questions. What has changed? What's going on? This reevaluation of Roswell starts in the late 1970s, at a time when trust in the government had eroded in the wake of events like Vietnam and Watergate. People were primed to believe that the government was hiding things from them because the government had, well, been hiding things from them. And in this new skeptical environment, stories of alien spaceships and UFOs, if not absolutely proven to be something else, were often considered the truth. And even if they were proven to be something else, those stories still might be true because the government was probably lying. And with that as the background, Roswell's myth takes on new life. For another decade and a half, the story ballooned, pun intended, and grew to encompass all kinds of new outlandish details building on what you've already heard before, like how there were secret government laboratories where scientists kept alien bodies in glass cases, not just from Roswell, but from all the other alien crashes that were happening all over the place. There were books about the truth that came out one after the other, and based on the supposed number of eyewitnesses, which had really exploded exponentially since the beginning of this, you'd think the whole state of New Mexico was involved. Finally, in 1994, the government has had enough, and they decided to release a full report on Roswell and make it public. Now, the timing here is important because this is after the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, or at least that phase of it. And in this report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that no, the device that crashed in Roswell was not, in fact, a weather balloon. I knew it. Rather, it was a top-secret Cold War operation known as Project Mogul. Its purpose was to keep an eye, an ear actually, on Soviet nuclear capabilities by listening for the sound waves from atomic bomb detonations. A totally reasonable and likely explanation. And you'd think that that would put an end to all of this speculation. No, it didn't. The UFO researchers, as well as a lot of other people, didn't buy it. The military had just demonstrated that it had lied once. Why should it be trusted now to tell the truth? And so the debate over what is really happening at Roswell continues to this day, along with what the government is hiding. Because basically, if the government was lying, is telling the truth now, it was lying back then. And if it was telling the truth then, it's lying now. And either way, there is a big, fat lie. And once the government has been caught lying, which it has multiple times now, Watergate, Vietnam, Iran-Contra, nuclear testing, downwinders, Roswell, it's kind of hard to get our trust back. And not only that, but the discovery of those actual lies is kind of like throwing gasoline on a conspiracy theory fire. When people don't feel like they're getting the kind of information and explanations that they can trust, they will often turn to conspiracy theories. When they feel like the world is an insecure place where they have no control, and there had been plenty of that going on in the 70s and 80s, well, conspiracy theories provide an acceptable explanation as to why they feel powerless. And conspiracy theorists also like to think that they have access to information that most people don't. It gives them a sense of being in the know, of having power. So while Roswell is certainly not the first time people had chosen to believe conspiracy theories, and it is definitely not the last, I have heard the argument that had the government been honest from the get-go, the whole thing might have disappeared. But then again, maybe not. Because there's another factor at play here. Even without the conspiracy theories, the idea of flying saucers and aliens had already started to capture our imaginations. This is something we wanted to believe in. Look at all those stories that were happening in 1947, and then the world goes crazy for them. And when the government says, no, there's really nothing here, we choose to ignore it because we want so badly to believe in the more interesting story, the alien story. We'll gladly accept the half-baked memories of strangers who weren't even there over the written reports of government officials who at this point really have nothing left to hide, because we want so badly to believe, because we like to be entertained, and because a good story is often way more fun. And I totally get why we would want to imagine visitors from another galaxy, although I'm really still hard-pressed to believe that this happened at Roswell. For one, Project Mogul is just a little too plausible, and two, it is really hard for me to believe that aliens came here from another galaxy through the cold vacuum of space, dodging rocks and debris, and they get nailed by a bolt of lightning over the desert in Roswell? I mean, come on. So, but all these details that don't add up, all the facts that point us in a more logical direction, they haven't stopped us from embracing this legend, even if we do so tongue-in-cheek. I know there is a word of caution to be shared here. We are living in some strange times, and they are full of some very bizarre conspiracy theories. As I mentioned before, Roswell is just one in a very long line of them. And it seems especially common that lately, people will grab on to the more interesting story, because it is just way more fun to imagine that kind of stuff, and they'll take it as the truth, and all reason be damned. So we do have to be careful. But I think that we can still enjoy a good story while adhering to facts and science and logic. And I think we can be open-minded without our brains falling out, as they say. After all, the universe is enormous. And there is probably life out there somewhere. And we cannot say for sure that aliens aren't bopping around the galaxy, or even that we haven't had an extraterrestrial visitor here on Earth at some point in our 4.5 billion year history. It doesn't have to have been right now. So as I see it, as long as you're careful, there is nothing wrong with wanting to believe, with getting caught up in a fun tale and enjoying the ride. It is a very human tendency, and it's one that I think all of you understand as well. Because after all, if I'd said I was doing a lecture about Roswell and the failed mechanics of Cold War equipment, or Roswell and mozzarella cheese, would you have come? Thank you.
Check. Thank you so much, Laura. Learned a lot. That was great. All right, friends, that is our first talk, which means that it is now halftime.
It's halftime.
So, if you would like, feel free to take a quick break, grab a snack, grab a drink, or you can stay and you can join us for a little game that we're going to be playing with our lovely speakers, who I will invite back to the stage. So, this is going to be on your phone, on your second screen. Here's the QR code in case you need it again, because we will be using Slido. So we're going to do something a little different tonight with the game. We are going to pit you, the audience, against our two lovely speakers. So I'm sure you're all familiar with stock photography. It's everywhere. It's a wild world out there. But today, we're going to be playing a game called Stock Exchange. So this is how it works. We're going to show you a stock image, a series of stock images, in fact, that are going to be extremely zoomed in. And on Slido, you're going to vote on whether that image is one of an alien or one of a musical instrument. And our speakers will also guess alongside of you. So if they will come back to the stage, we can get the game going. Hello.
Ahoy.
Ahoy. All right. This is the age-old battle of speaker versus audience. Okay, so Are you two ready for the first image?
I think so.
Okay, let's do it.
What happens if we get it wrong?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe we'll throw you off the stage. There's
Summary execution.
we should have gotten a dunk tank. That would have been very on brand. Next time, I'll remember that for next week. Okay, so this is the image. I know it probably doesn't look like much, but it is extremely zoomed in. So, is this image a man in a lizard suit playing the bongos, or is it an alien sipping a Zap Cola in the light of twin suns?
Alien.
I
vote
say
alien.
I say man in a lizard suit.
Lizard suit?
I'm on the alien side. I mean, it's going to be aliens for every one of my answers,
Ah.
pretty much. So.
Okay.
Well, it's just wishful thinking on my part because I would like to see a man in a lizard suit playing
Okay.
the bongos.
I can tell you one thing for sure. One of you is right.
Where is the image?
You want to see the image again? Can we bring the image back?
No.
Yes, no, maybe
Can't
so.
have it.
I'm going to be honest. It was just a bunch of
there it
gray. This is the image. This is the image. So you might have thought it was a blank screen, but it's not. So there you go. It was indeed a man in a lizard suit playing the bongos with a snazzy computer. Great. Okay. Ready for the next one?
Sure.
Okay. This is the image. This is not a holdover screen.
Beautiful.
Looks like
Okay.
pixels.
I see some pixelation there.
Yeah,
That's
it's got some
interesting.
pixels.
Okay. So, is this image a space rover planting the flag of their home nation on an alien landscape? Or is it an adorable half man, half pug playing the violin?
Aliens.
Aliens again?
I'll go for the aliens this time.
Wow, the audience really believes. Oh, I spoke too soon. No, I did not speak too soon. The audience really believes in space rover, though I'm kind of rooting for the violin pug myself. But let's see what we got. Wow, that's pretty great. Though notice there's no bow in that, so I don't know how that violin's making any sound.
Aliens?
Yeah,
It
that's
was
right.
abducted.
All right. Shall we go to the next one? Okay. I need not say it again, but this is the image. Okay. Is this an alien and a lady posing for a selfie as Jupiter rises behind them? Or is this a whimsical tortoise shaking his groove thing?
Whimsical tortoise.
Alien and a lady. I'm going to stay on theme.
Okay.
We also haven't had an alien yet. I'd like to point that out.
Oh, this is like a deadlock right now.
Ooh.
Wow.
It's like the
whimsical,
elections.
whimsical tortoise is game.
Shoot.
I think everyone secretly wants it to be a whimsical tortoise.
All right.
All right, let's see what it is.
See, I was right.
Ah, the disappointment is palpable. It's okay. All right, got two more. Next image. Is this a purple alien waving goodbye to their spaceship? Or a lady in a unicorn costume breaking a trumpet?
Unicorn costume.
Unicorn?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the unicorn on this one. I just want to see that.
Yeah. Note to the tech team, there should be a trick question next week where it's neither of them. And it's something entirely different. All right, people believe in the unicorn.
Oh.
All right. Okay. You'd have to be pretty strong to break a trumpet like that, but maybe she's very strong. I don't know. Okay, this is our last question. This is the one for all the marbles. Has anyone gotten all of them right, by the way? Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
We'll give you a prize. All right. The last stock photo of the night. Is this a moon man looking at Earth from the surface of Mars? Or is this a string quartet performing for snails in the desert?
That's a trick question, because how could a moon man be looking from the surface of Mars?
Laura Krantz, everyone!
Yeah,
Maybe he was born on the moon? I don't know.
I want to see the Moon Man. I'm curious now. What makes him a Moon Man?
Oh, man. I do like snails.
Me too. Everyone seems to really be reading.
I got to go for the moon
This
man,
is
though.
by far the most disproportionate one, so. All right. Come on, snails.
Nah, moon man.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
All right.
But that is an earthling. That's not a moon man.
Martian moon man with, I don't know, a very unconvincing spacesuit.
there's an American flag.
Looks.
Does he have a map?
He got that spacesuit for the discount rack, definitely. All right. Thank you so much to Laura and Gio, and thank you to all of you for playing our game with us. That concludes halftime.
And now, on with the show.
All right. I hope everyone is back. I don't think many of you left, but welcome back regardless. I'm going to introduce our second speaker. You might know who he is because you've seen him. But let me introduce him properly because he is a very phenomenal man. So he will be speaking and teaching us tonight about Georgian polyphonic singing. He is a musician and multi-instrumentalist born and raised in the Eastern European country of Georgia. He's a classical and jazz pianist, singer-songwriter, and guitarist fluent in genres ranging from rock to flamenco. His shows can hone in on a specific niche or take the listener on a cohesive sonic journey. His debut album, Songs of Life and Death, releases on August 27th of this year. So please, with a proper introduction, give a warm and rousing welcome to Gio Barabadze.
And thank you, Brenton, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to the MCA for holding this event. I have not been to, let's give it up for these guys. I think this is a really cool premise for events, and I've been having fun so far, and I've never been to this theater before, and it's quite lovely. I look forward to seeing more events here. So, my name is Gio, and as Brenton mentioned, I am from Georgia, the country in Eastern Europe, not the state in America. And I'm here to talk to you about an art form from my country, Georgian polyphonic singing. And the word polyphonic for non-musical folks, that just means choir. So whenever you have 3 or more voices, that's polyphony. So, there we are. So, where is Georgia? I think a lot of people outside of Georgia don't know a whole lot about Georgia because we're pretty small and we're pretty tucked away, and we don't have a lot of claim to fames, except for the fact that it's quite possible that wine was first made in Georgia. It's not, we all like wine. It's not 100% confirmed fact, but it's the current standing hypothesis. The oldest bottle of wine was found in the territory that is now Georgia, and it's 8,000 years old. And also the word vino is wine in Georgian, and chvirili, that word actually has meaning in Georgian that's related to the winemaking methods back there. So a lot of people think that wine came from Georgia. Winemaking is very important. And as you can see, it's a mountainous region. On the right over here, you have the capital city, Tbilisi, which is where I grew up. And on the left, you have the region Svaneti, that has the highest populated village in Europe. And I think it is something like 13,000 feet or something, and people are living up there. And this is where Georgia is on the map. So it is in the middle of everything. It is in the middle of the east and west. It is in the middle of the south and north. I think before the Soviet Union broke up, politically we were considered to be a part of Asia. Now we're considered to be a part of Europe. And that is the city Mtskheta, which used to be the capital city of Georgia before the 5th century. And in the 5th century, the capital city became Tbilisi. So Georgia's been around for a long time, over 2,000 years, possibly even longer. We just have the oldest records of the ancestor language to what we speak now, Georgian, and it goes all the way back to 2,000 years ago. And Georgian is a language that is not similar to any other language. There's several dialects of it, but they're all spoken within the borders of Georgia. And we're talking, there's no similarity. It's not similar to Russian in any way. It's not similar to Armenian, which is another ancient language. And it's not similar to other Caucasus states. And Caucasus Mountains are the mountains that encircle Georgia. And you can see them nice and clear here. This is another town in Georgia, and you have these nice, beautiful mountains. I think the mountains that are in Georgia go all the way up to 18,000 feet, and then the tallest mountain in that mountain range is Mount Elbrus, which is the tallest mountain in Europe. And then these are some Georgians dressed in traditional Georgian garb. We do not walk around the streets dressed like that, I promise. We like to wear jeans. Actually, before the Soviet Union broke up, Levi's were a coveted treasure. We thought they were the bee's knees, and whenever somebody managed to get outside of the Soviet Union, one of the biggest requests was to get the Levi's, and they were very expensive. And imagine our disappointment when we found out that they're not really that big of a deal here. But yeah, people will dress like this, though, usually for performances, so for dance performances, or for singing groups to sing Georgian polyphonic music, or for weddings. And Georgian dance is also a pretty exquisite art form in its own right that we're not going to be talking about here today. So yeah, like I was saying before, Georgia is like the melting pot of the ancient world. It's in the middle of everything. And it was in the middle of all the trade routes. It was in the middle of the Silk Road. And it's been around for a long time, and it's absorbed all kinds of different elements of culture. And I'm going to show you in a little bit a picture that shows that. But we had travelers coming in from China and India, and we had travelers coming in from Africa and the Middle East, and then we had European travelers coming in, and we've been conquered and unconquered and reconquered. We were part of the Roman Empire briefly. We were part of the Persian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and we're currently having problems with Russia, but who isn't? So this is a nice picture because it shows you a wide variety of Georgian musical instruments. Because usually these are instruments from different regions of Georgia too. Like sometimes groups will only have 2 or 3 of these. And you can see an instrument that resembles the harp that I imagine came from Europe. You have an instrument called panduri over here on the left that's kind of shaped like a diamond. And that's very similar to instruments you see in the Middle East. We have chuniri right here in the middle, which is a bowed instrument, which is very similar to the erhu from China. And then you have an accordion, which is a 19th century instrument, not an ancient one, but became a very big part of the Georgian folklore. Anyway, so what is Georgian polyphonic singing? What's so special about it? It is a unique style of choir singing that has been in my home for a long, long time, well over 1,000 years. In fact, it's one of the oldest systems of polyphony in the world, and it's also the oldest system of Christian singing. So Christian polyphonic, polyphonic singing in the Christian tradition. So yeah, think like Gregorian chants and that sort of stuff. You see this music in two different contexts. You see it in the folk context and around the table where people are having feasts. And then you see it in the church context where people sing their religious hymns. And a lot of the styles are similar, and they were developed more in the folk tradition, and then the church tradition heavily draws upon those. And Georgia is very small. It's smaller than Colorado, and yet we're divided into 16 different regions that each have a rich culture of their own. Some of them even have their own languages, and that includes their own style of singing. And some of these styles can be very different, yet they still follow the same basic set of rules. And what I mean by this, like let's say we take jazz, heavy metal, and folk music, right? Very different genres of music, but for the most part, unless we talk about people that are very experimental, but for the most part, they follow the same Western music theory, even though they're different styles of music. So we have a little of that in Georgia with our own styles of music. And this is what a typical Georgian choir would look like. In fact, this isn't typical. This is pretty small. Usually the Georgian singing groups are much bigger. They would fill up this entire stage. They are usually gendered traditionally, so you have men's groups and women's groups. Although when you have shows, you usually see a wide variety. So you will see people from different cultures performing on stages, and men and women, and usually it involves dancing as well. So how is Georgian singing different from just the normal polyphonic singing that, I shouldn't say normal, but I guess Western, that is more common in our world here? We have unique chords and the way that we construct chords. Generally I'm going to use some musical jargon here, but in Western music theory, we have triads. I can just demonstrate these real quick on the piano, if I could get some volume. But like these are like normal triads that you might hear in just your good old pop songs, but the more Georgian triad might sound like this. And a lot of like dissonant sounds, like these are pretty common. And then we have a drone, which means the bass note is just held low, and it does change once in a while. And that's not a unique Georgian thing. Other cultures use this, although it's not very common in Western musical traditions. So I want to demonstrate with my loop pedal here exactly how Georgian singing is different from the Western traditions. So I'm going to start off just by singing a chord progression that more or less follows Western music theory rules. Check. Okay. Oh wait, I gotta redo that. There we go. these were 2-5-1s. We started in one key, and then we modulated into a different key. And modulating, that just means we have a certain pitch that we're revolving around, and then we go into a different pitch center. And a very typical way that we do that in Western music theory is through the use of 2-5-1s, which is a certain kind of chord progression that we actually hear in most of the music that we listen to. So now I want to demonstrate a more Georgian harmony, and I'd like to invite our friend and MC Brenton back to the stage, and he's going to help me with the drones. Let's welcome Brenton back up to the stage.
Let's see if you trust me, Gail.
Thank you, Brenton. Thank you. There we are. So you heard, to kind of recoup what we heard, I think it's more special to actually hear the voices, because it has quite a bit of a different feeling than just hearing it on the piano. But if I just repeat what we did just earlier with the more Western ideas. So that's more of a typical chord progression we might hear, as opposed to something like. Yeah, so very, very unique, very different, and yet somehow it works. And I think that's something very fascinating, not just about the Georgian system, but all the different systems of music that we have around the world. We have this term Western music theory, and I like to say Western music theory because what we think about music theory is not ubiquitous everywhere. We have African systems that are very unique. You have an entire system of Indian classical music, and China and other Asian countries have their own systems as well. Then you go into the Middle East, and they have their own scales and types of chords. And then you go to Georgia, and it doesn't sound like anything else, and yet those other influences from Asia, from Middle East, from Europe, they all somehow made it in. And you do hear like some triads in Georgian music as well, like what we might consider like triads and chords that we use in Western traditions, but their function is different. They do different things. Yeah, so you guys got a little demonstration, and just some additional info for you guys. We had some prominent Georgian composers that started being inspired by classical music that especially made its comeback in the 19th century. Classical music was actually pretty niche before the 19th century. Like we think of Bach and all these people from the 17th century, but those guys really were composing for the royalty. And it was really in the 19th century when classical music started being popular all over the place. So, of course, it reached Georgia, and Georgian classical composers also studied Georgian folk music through lens of classical music, and that's out there if you're interested to see exactly what's happening. It has been written down. And then you have Georgian ensembles that I mentioned earlier that tour the world and perform all over the place, give workshops. And of course, if you get a chance to visit Georgia, if you're not eating the delicious food or visiting the mountains, there's many venues where you can hear Georgian music. And you can hear it in formal venues like these, or even larger theaters where you see gigantic performance troupes of singers and dancers. And you can also see it in restaurants. That's very common. You go to a restaurant, not even an expensive restaurant, just something local, maybe in a village, and you'll have a group of three singers, maybe with an accordion or a panduri, and they come out and they start singing these songs. And here's another picture of what a different singing ensemble might look like. And you see there's the chuniri, the bowed instrument, and a bunch of guys that are dressed in what looks like military gear, ancient military gear. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation on Georgian polyphonic singing, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Gio. That was beautiful. Believe it or not, that was my second time doing Georgian polyphonic singing. The first time was during the rehearsal 2 hours ago. So thank you, Gio, for teaching me those chords. That was super fun. All right, so now we're going to get started with the fun part of the evening. And as we get close to winding down, we're going to do the Q&A, which is what Mixed Taste is all about. So make sure you have your phones out if you want to participate, open Slido. And again, if you don't have the QR code, there it is, also in your programs. So this is your opportunity. Mixed Taste is all about making connections, and this is what we're going to ask you to do. So just keep in mind that if you want to be eligible for the prize tonight, to just include your name with the question that you ask. So I'm going to invite Gio and Laura to join me for the Q&A to answer your questions. Oh. And for especially good questions, we have brought back the Mixed Taste tradition of the gong. So when a good question is asked, you will hear this sound. So be ready with the gong. All right, hopefully you've had some chances to reflect. And so think to yourself, think about everything that you've heard, and really ask yourself, what are the connections potentially between Roswell and Georgian polyphonic singing? And how can we celebrate those connections? All right. All right, so I have my little Slido up here, and I will wait for your questions to populate. All right, we've got a whole bunch of questions here. Okay. So, Trisha asks, what kind of conspiratorial thinking is common in Georgia? And has it permeated pop culture like the Roswell conspiracy here in the U.S.?
That's a good one. I was hoping this question would get asked. I mean, a lot of conspiracies really deal with... No, a lot of conspiracies deal with like Russia and political things. Actually, one thing that we are famous for that we're not proud of, Stalin was Georgian. Stalin is not his real last name, it's Yosef Jugashvili. Stalin means man of steel in Russian. You can see he had a very small ego and choose a name like that. But I mean, there are all kinds of like stories about how like he had this psychic that he would see, and that like he had like some esoteric knowledge of how power functioned, and people would even say that when he walked into a room, like whether you liked him or not, you would like stand and feel this like reverence almost. And apparently his psychic told him a month before he died that he was gonna die, and then he died. But another one that permeated pop culture, specifically the show Ancient Aliens.
Oh, yeah.
There was So one of the things they talk about on Ancient Aliens is how like you have these ancient icons of Christian scenes like the crucifixion of Jesus, and then you seem to have objects in there that make no sense, that look like spaceships or some pieces of technology. So there is a Georgian cathedral, Svetistroveli. It's where my parents got married. And it's in Mtskheta, so there was that city that had two rivers kind of converging. In fact, it was visible in that photo. It's a big place. It was built in the 9th century, I think, or 10th. I don't. It's very old. But there's a fresco in there that's dated to be at least 1,000 years old, and Jesus is being crucified, and there's what appears to be two flying saucers with jets coming out of them, or they look like jellyfish. You know, they look like jellyfish to me, and I've actually seen this icon in real life, and I mean, yeah, it's like two triangular objects with more triangles coming. So you could say the triangular object is like a spaceship, and then the other triangles are like the jets. Yeah, and I think there's other things like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Gio. I'm just going to share briefly. Emily says, not a question, but thank you for making me feel like a kid at story time. It's very sweet. Thank you, Emily. Jack asks, math is seen as the fundamental universal language, and music is seen as sonified math. Will there be a time when we communicate with aliens via song?
Ooh.
Would you like to start answering that one?
That's a very good question. We have to assume that aliens have vocal cords. We have to assume that that we can hear, oh, you can bang the gong. We have to assume that aliens can hear us the same way we hear them. There's a lot of assumptions you have to make about alien biology to assume we would communicate in song. But math is definitely what we are using now as we send these messages out into the universe. Music, I mean, they sent music. There's the Voyager records. There are some bits of music that were encoded in some of the other messages that they sent out from the Arecibo telescope. There are, I feel like, whale song. We may be learning how to communicate with aliens by learning how whales communicate with each other. It's good practice. So, you know, it could happen.
And I want to add something to that. Something that we don't think about a lot is, so music happens on a certain spectrum, right? But there's also this thing that happens, at least sounds that are produced in nature, and that includes like pianos and musical instruments. Essentially, very few sounds are the exception, usually sounds created by synthesizers, but most sounds that we hear create overtones. In the overtone series, and like if you try to play chords really low on the piano, they sound really muddy because the overtones are in the spectrum that we can hear. So if we could hear like all of the spectrum or even more of it, music would not sound very good because we'd be hearing all these overtones that are clashing. So even the reason why music sounds good to us is because we have this limited spectrum. Yeah, but I think it's a fascinating question because it is like these mathematical relationships, and even if these aliens have some other spectrum, like we know that deaf people can feel frequencies, and they can even differentiate between different pitches based on the feelings, even though they can't hear. So I think that's a really fascinating question.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said about vibration, I think. Mel asks, seems like the conspiracy theorists and singers are both trying to communicate about myths. Who do you think gets more out of it, the storyteller or the listener?
Wow.
I hope both. I mean, it's no fun to be a storyteller if the people aren't enjoying the story.
I think somebody was telling me, this was an interview with George Lucas, about how George Lucas missed out on a cultural phenomenon that was seeing Star Wars in a theater for the first time because he was there the whole time making it. And as an artist, like, we often critique our own work. We're also so used to what we do that even when we make improvements, they're small improvements over a long period of time. So it's, but it's also such a joy to perform. So yeah, I think both.
A nervous joy. It's a sweaty, sweaty joy.
Oh, I love that. SGC asks, why was Major Marcel holding what looks like tinfoil in his hands? Where is that tinfoil now? Did they make hats?
I'm pretty sure they did. You got to be careful of those brainwaves. So the pieces that came from the weather balloon, aka Project Mogul, were actually kind of bootstrapped. It was some of the normal materials you would use in a weather balloon, so mylar and sticks. And then they didn't have enough tape, so they actually went to a hobby store and bought this craft tape, which is, it was like for kids, and it's those hieroglyphs that you saw were just the symbols that were on the craft tape, but everyone sort of like took it to the next level. So, yeah.
This is this is a great one. What's the best Georgian wine to serve with mozzarella cheese?
Oh my God! Well, it's
That's
funny
the winner
because
right there.
Mozzarella cheese. Mozzarella cheese is very similar to sulguni, which is a Georgian cheese. I would say a good saperavi would go well with it. Yeah, a nice. You need a nice red wine, I think, for a cheese like mozzarella. So saperavi, I would recommend, or maybe some Kinsmarauli even would go good.
We're gonna need you to write those down.
I know you guys know exactly how to spell these too, right?
Oh, that's awesome. Have aliens ever landed in Roswell, Georgia?
Is there a Roswell, Georgia?
I think they're talking about a different Georgia
that
here.
Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I was
there's
like,
a
wait a
Roswell in
minute.
the state Georgia.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, my grandpa said that they were like, he's had alien sightings. Actually, we had a little property we would go for vacation, and he said he saw a bunch of aliens there. And to be honest with you, like, the place felt really creepy at night.
Oh wait, actually, sorry, I just anonymous. Someone didn't put their name, but do sounds recorded from space have chord progressions?
It depends if you record them in like the vacuum of space or in like a space station with air, because chords are just vibrations of the air. So if there is no air, then there are no chords.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
You heard it. No music in space. Let's see here. Maybe just a couple more. Bob asks, is Georgian polyphonic singing unique and fringe in order to evoke power and control for those that have less conspiratorial thinking, such as equivalent to those in the U.S.? There's a little bit of some grammar here going on, but
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
yeah. Let me read this question one more time. To evoke power and control for those that have less. Bob, if you want to rephrase the question, I'm not fully understanding, but the people seem to like it. So, Bob, just rephrase it, and if there's time, I'll get to it. What kind of voice modulation do aliens have?
Do they have voices? Do they even have vocal cords?
Yeah.
I mean, they might communicate through smell, which that could be interesting.
These are things I have not thought about.
No time like the present.
How did Georgia stay so alien from other cultures around it?
Ooh.
That's actually a great question. So it's actually, the answer to that question is also the reason why we still exist. Like, Georgia was around when the Assyrian Empire was a thing, like, and the kingdom of Colchis right? It wasn't called Georgia. I mean, Georgia isn't even a Georgian name. Greeks called us Georgia because geo means land, and we had a lot of fertile land and farmers, so they called it land of land. That's what Georgia means. And then Georgia in America is named after King George, but George comes from the Greek Georgios, which means farmer. So we're back to land.
King farmer then.
But in Georgian it's Sakartvelo, but before it was Sakartvelo, it was Kolchis, which is a surprisingly easy word for Georgians to say. And yeah, we were in the Greek myths and such, but we have mountains to the north of us, we have mountains to the south of us, we have desert to the east, to the east, and then we have the Black Sea to the west. So it wasn't really the easiest place to get to begin with. And because of this, we've used that to our advantage. We would have invaders that would come, they would try to force us to speak their language, adopt to their culture, and maybe it would work for 100 years or so, but we knew our territory better than anybody else, and we knew the mountains and all the hideouts and things, so we were able to keep enemies at bay. But I think that also meant that there wasn't a lot of contact between Georgia and a lot of the places on the other side of the Black Sea. Yeah, because we're fairly prominent in the Middle East. I mean, actually, a lot of Muslim-speaking countries. I don't know if I should be saying this, but a lot of from a lot of the Muslim countries, people go to Georgia to gamble and drink because they can't do that back home. So Georgia is like the Las Vegas. No, it really is the Las Vegas of the Middle East. And I mean, also Georgian food is the most expensive food you can buy in Russia. And also in the Soviet Union, whenever like the Communist Party it was one of those things where, yeah, we abuse you, but here's a gift, and forget about the abuse. So like whenever somebody would do something of distinction, they would send you on vacation to Georgia. And Georgia was seen as like this beautiful dreamland. So yeah, we're well known in that region. Like if you're talking Turkey or the Middle East or even like Western Asia or Russia. But then when it comes to more Western Europe, we haven't quite proliferated that far, except for the wine. So I hope that changes. Actually, a lot of Georgians. There is another reason. So the founder of the American Ballet Company, the original American Ballet, was Georgian. But he changed his last name because I think his last name was something like Basilashvili, and he changed it to like Basie or something. So a lot of Georgians that are prominent will generally do that. They will change their last names. My stage name is Giobard Zero because people can't say Barabadze.
All right, so we're gonna have, this is the final question of this little Q&A session. Ryan, aka the Hyphen, asks, Georgian polyphonic singing can be the acronym GPS. We don't know where the Roswell crash happened. Should we use this GPS instead?
But how?
Yeah.
I like this. I like this kind of creative thinking.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gio, Laura, and for your wonderful questions. All righty. So, my wonderful colleague Sarah Bai is looking at all of the questions, and she is going to hand me the secret envelope to let me know who had the best question. All right, so each week we give a prize. It's prize time to the person who makes the best connection between the two talks. So let's see here. Let's see who made the best connection tonight. Yeah, that's right, that's right. The best connection goes to Mel, who asked, seems like conspiracy theorists and singers communicate about myth. Who gets more out of it, the storyteller or the listener? So congratulations, Mel. You have just won 2 tickets to Camp Christmas. I know Christmas seems far away, but it's not so far. A wonderful event, actually created by Off Center and our colleague Charlie Miller. So we are so happy for you. So just make sure to email programs@mcadenver.org to claim those tickets. And who knows, it could be Christmas in July as well. All right, so we leave you this evening with a little bit of a creative offering. And in order to do that creative offering, as if we have not seen this man enough tonight, I'm going to have to one last time re-invite Gio to the stage. Gio, real quick, what was the name of that church where your parents got married? All right, so in order for us to make this happen, we're going to need a little bit of help from you, the audience. So I would like for you all to just speak out verbally. What are you taking away from this event? Whether it's, so just in a short statement, between 1 to 3 words. So whether it's an idea, something you heard, a connection, a moment, a photo that you saw. And I would ask, try to be as specific as possible. So rather than saying like, a spark of an idea or inspiration or something, like what's something really specific that you're taking away from our evening together? And just feel free to just go ahead and shout them out. All right, I heard mozzarella, visit Georgia, I want to believe. Modulation, okay. Zovia. All right. Any others? Any finals? Yeah, okay.
Someone said khachapuri.
Did we talk about khachapuri today?
We didn't, but somebody said khachapuri.
Georgian food, I imagine.
Georgian food, Georgian cheese pie. Delicious.
Okay. What's that? Drinking good wine. Drinking good wine. Okay. So this is happening right now in the moment, and Gio and I, neither of us has any idea what the other person is going to do right now. So let's make it happen.
Let's do this.
Yeah. Do you need that mic? Oh no, you have a mic.
No, I got
Yeah,
this
you're
one.
good.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. So, it's mixed taste with beautiful wine because it was like 8,000 years took its time. So we step back because I don't dump it. I got the unicorn, he's snapping up the trumpet. So let's step back because I am a nice fella. I go to Georgia and Roswell for some mozzarella. We step back because I don't receive. I look up to the sky and I'm saying, yes, I believe. I want to believe in stories to tell. We step back and it is Roswell. We gotta go because it's Bashvili. We're gonna go in because I'm feeling, yes, so silly, but I am feeling the mirth when the Georgian here because it is the wine birth in the mountains, yes, in the Caucasus. We step back because that we are bossing it. In Roswell, where did they land? Was it north? Was it northwest? Who knows? It's unplanned. So step back because I'm on the attack. Nope, I got my tinfoil hat. So maybe it's a government cover-up. Maybe it's a mystery. But let's go back and, yes, study our history because we gathered here. We told stories and we came back and that we got our glory. You're the listener, we are the storyteller, but together we here in the wine cellar because we gathered around for a mixed taste feast, and right now it's a beautiful release. So thank you so much, Roswell, Gio, and Laura, because we did it for you with the flora and fauna. And so we sang, we told stories, we got our glories, and right now we hope we feel sublime, and everyone in Mixed Taste have a beautiful night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, friends. I'm gonna have Gio take us out. I've said this to him many times at many events, but Gio, can you please do the trumpet?
All right.
Have a good night, friends. Thank you to the audience, to Laura and Gio, the MCA Denver, DCPA Off Center. Please take a moment to fill out the surveys on your phones. It really helps us out. I will be back next week hosting Teacher Burnout and Trash Art. Have a good night.